tell you, gentlemen, science has agreed that unless something is done and done quickly, man, as the dominant species of life on Earth, will be extinct within a year.
Direction of the President of the United States, stay in your homes. I repeat, stay in your homes. Your personal safety, the safety of the entire city, depends upon your full cooperation with the military authorities.
Yes, cities, nations, even civilization itself, threatened with annihilation, because in one moment of history-making violence, nature, mad, rampant, wrought its most awesome creation. For born in that swirling inferno of radioactive dust were things so horrible, so terrifying, so hideous. There is no word to describe them.
We may be witnesses to a biblical prophecy come true, and there shall be destruction and darkness come up in creation, and the beast shall reign over the earth.
Yes, the earth, the skies above and the seas below, infested by swarms of nightmare creatures, crueler, deadlier than the armored giants of prehistoric eras. Here is a wild, headlong flight into terror, as the desert erupts with the grim battle for survival. Here is a fear-frenzied moment of suspense, as mankind totters before a thing that multiplies faster than it can be killed. Here is a desperate plunge into the black depths of the earth, where human courage challenges the brute force, the slashing jaws, the poison fangs that guard the subterranean nest where the beast spawns its terrible progeny.
To all units, condition red, drain 267 is the target area. Repeat, condition red, drain 267 is the target area.
Type of gas we could use?
No, we can't take a chance. It might poison the whole city.
This motion picture was made in 1954 by Warner Studios, which cost $1 million to produce. It is considered the first giant bug movie ever made. It is also referred to by many critics as one of the best of its kind. The idea for the film was scripted after the success of Warner Studios' The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms the previous year. In this story, a nest of giant ants are discovered in the New Mexico desert. However, the picture was actually filmed in the Mojave Desert in California, substituting for New Mexico. It was originally decided to film the movie in color and possibly 3D. However, when it came time to start filming, the 3D camera rig broke down. In addition, Warner Studios did not care for the color of the test shots. The following day, Warner Studios decided to cut the budget back and film the picture in black and white. Nevertheless, this only added to the film's advantage of being more ominous. The distinct whistling sound that is heard in the movie was created by multiple bird sounds, including a tree frog. This distinct sound added to the dismay of the scenes. Besides the giant puppet ants that were created, real ants were used with a back projection for some scenes. Some stop-action models were also used. The larger sculptures were painted a purplish-green color, which were operated by unseen technicians. Giant wind machines were used with the larger ant structures to move the loose limbs on the models, giving it the appearance that it's alive. Finally, tight editing was used to prevent audiences from seeing the model's limitations. Some scenes were filmed in pre-preparation for the 3D cameras, like the opening title and when a flamethrower is aiming directly at the camera. This movie starred James Arness. After watching the movie Them, Hollywood actor John Wayne recommended Arness for the role of Marshal Matt Dillon for the Western television series, which ran from 1955 to 1975. Towards the end of the film, Leonard Nimoy makes an appearance as an Army staff sergeant in a communication room.
Most terrifying news of all. At nightfall, monstrous animals crawl out of crater of volcano. Great herds of cattle stampede before this living inferno. Vast area devastated by appalling new horror. A creature named the Black Scorpion by panic-stricken people of San Lorenzo. Entire population prays for deliverance.
For miles around, cowboys came upon one dead steer after another. One of them had heard the tale of the demon bull of the Maricopa. Having lost family or friends to something absolutely unknown, we could be in another world.
Nation's leaders confer as news received a possible threat to capital.
This is a city of 4 million people. If word of these leaks out, the panic of the population could be worse than the scorpions.
The Black Scorpion destroys communications. Hundreds annihilated. Produced on a scale never achieved before by any science fiction picture. Thousands in the cast.
follow up on the success of their earlier film, Them, Warner Studios decided to go ahead and make the 1957 The Black Scorpion. This time, instead of radiation causing the giant mutation like the other mutant stories, it's a volcanic eruption that forces the giant scorpions to come to the surface.
Nightfall, monstrous animals crawl out of crater of volcano. Great herds of cattle stampede before this living inferno.
The film was directed by Edward Ludwig, and the stop-motion effects were created by the original maker of King Kong, Willis O'Brien. It is believed that the models originally made for King Kong, but never used, were the trapdoor spider and the giant tentacle worm seen in The Black Scorpion. What makes this film look unique, compared to other predecessors, is that the setting for the film is set in Mexico instead of the United States. Interestingly, these large mutant insects move much quicker than the usual heavy-footed giants seen in other movies. This gives the scorpions in the movie a much more skin-crawling appearance. Along with the miniature models used for stop-motion effects, a large mechanical head of a monstrous scorpion was used for close-ups and reaction shots for the actors and audiences. This exaggerated head of a drooling scorpion added more fright to the other scene of the stop-motion models. The movie was praised for the special effects, but criticized for the unexceptional storyline.
For its entry in the Nature Gone Mad giant bug sweepstakes, another trend of 1950s fear films, Universal again turned to Jack Arnold, whose Tarantula is one of the best of the bunch.
What if circumstances were to magnify one of them in size and strength, took it out of its primitive world and turned it loose in ours? Then expect something that's fiercer, more cruel and deadly than anything that ever walked the earth.
Even science was stunned. The new atomic miracle should have been mankind's greatest boon. Instead, when such power to cause phenomenal growth proved dangerously unstable, man was confronted with his most shocking blunder.
The isotope triggered our nutrient into a nightmare.
A blunder that transformed a tiny insect into the 100-foot spider that was now ravaging the panic-stricken countryside.
Arnold once more returned to the forbidding landscape of the desert. The aliens and Gillman of his previous films were replaced by a giant hairy spider that marauds the countryside, killing cattle and people alike, until it is blown sky high by a military fighter plane piloted by a young actor named Clint Eastwood. But the real star is the title character, a truly mega tarantula calculated to give arachnophobes everywhere a chill or two, as it keeps popping out of nowhere like the shark in Jaws.
That was really kind of fun, because when you consider a little animal that's about that big, and then you put it up on a mountain, and it becomes, 300 feet tall, and you get out in the desert, and Mara Corday and I, were out there, and we had to imagine that.
I remember Jack saying, how they got them to, the tarantula wranglers, they have little air jets, they get them to go this way, where they appeal to a dog with some food or a treat. They do this with air things.
I bugged my father, who was a golf pro and would work all day, like get up real early and come home real late. And I bugged him. He had to take me to this movie on Thursday or Wednesday, because otherwise I wouldn't get to see it. And he, out of the goodness of his heart, he agreed to accompany me to the theater, the Colony Theater in Livingston, New Jersey, to see Tarantula. And the movie was on for about 20 minutes, and I was so scared that I couldn't watch the picture. And I ended up pacing in the lobby. And I remember the manager pointing me out and like going to the assistant manager, look at this kid, he can't take it. And all I can think of now is this image of my father sitting alone in this theater watching this giant spider movie, wondering, where is this kid?
The sketchbooks for Tarantula, which was a shot-by-shot description on how he's going to set up a given shot. Such and such will be processed, and this will be miniature, and we'll do a split screen here, this will be live action, and so on. He seemed far more oriented toward dealing with character and script than he did the technical end of it, but he was no slouch when it came to the technical end of it either.
Where are the bodies?
Easy. In all the kingdom of the living, there is no more deadly or voracious creature than the praying mantis. You think you'll be able to drive it out to sea? I hope so.
Every device of military science, every defensive weapon, radar, planes, rockets, marshaled to destroy 1,000 tons of beastly fury. A monster leaving a trail of carnage, spreading panic across a continent.
Hit the alert button.
Yes, sir. Nothing in its path was safe. Not the planes in the sky. Not the ships at sea.
Mamma mia!
Nor the vehicles on the ground.
You boys might just as well go back. There aren't any bodies.
And then this most dangerous monster that ever lived challenged the security of our city.
This was a Universal International film, directed by Nathan Uran. This would be the director's first science fiction motion picture. Even though this movie was cheaply made, the effects for this 1957 motion picture were considered stunning for its time. Like many low-budget 1950s movies, the director used its share of library and stock footage for filler. Air Force stock footage of military planes were taken from a short film called Guardians All, giant papier-mâché mantis puppets were constructed for the movie. These mantis models were 200 feet long, 40 feet high, with a wingspan of 150 feet. There were also two smaller models created. One was 6 feet tall, another 1 foot. These smaller models were used when showing the mantis walking or flying through the sky. The only time when a live mantis was used in the movie is when you see one crawling up the needle of the Washington Monument. The film footage of the Arctic village was taken from another Universal picture, the 1933 SOS Iceberg. When the motion picture came out in 1957, it was released as a double feature. Even though many critics gave the movie bad reviews, mainly because of the poor story structure, future critics praised the picture for its fun and energetic viewing.
We may be witnessing the beginning of an era that will mean the complete annihilation of man.
Annihilation?
The beginning of the end.
A menace so massive, so overwhelming, that thousands upon thousands are propelled into senseless terror. Panic takes the place of planned evacuation, and whole cities are paralyzed by fear.
The Air Force is standing by with an atom bomb. You can't drop an atom bomb on Chicago.
This 1957 movie is about giant mutant grasshoppers that threaten to take the city of Chicago after eating radioactive vegetables. The movie cost around $300,000 to make and was financed by American Broadcast and United Paramount Theaters, who wanted to get in on the giant bug movie craze. It was directed by Burt Gordon, known for making creative, science fiction movies with very little money. The Beginning of the End was filmed in just 2 weeks, with an additional 2 months for completion. This picture would be the director's first giant bug movie, before going on to make a giant spider movie called Earth vs. Spider. Many of the ideas for the film were stolen from other movie plots, including the eerie whistling sound used for the giant ants in the movie Them. For the picture, the director purchased 200 non-hopping, non-flying grasshoppers from Waco, Texas. Only male grasshoppers were allowed to be taken because the agriculture department were worried about them breeding. These grasshoppers were kept in a box until their screen debut. Unfortunately, they became cannibalistic, leaving only 12 left alive for the production. It was considered at the time that many of the superimposed scenes were cleverly done and very effective. For one scene, the director had live grasshoppers crawling up a postcard cutout of the Wrigley building. When the director wanted the grasshoppers to simulate getting shot, he simply tilted the photograph, causing some of them to slide down. Fortunately, the editor cut the film before the insects walked off the building and onto the sky, giving away the effect. The effect was so convincing that some movie critics believed that robotic models were used. Whenever this movie would play on Chicago late-night television, hosts of the show would add additional city landmarks into the movie for a laugh.
Whatever you have imagined in your wildest dreams now becomes a visual reality. As Jules Verne's most fantastic adventure in space and time becomes an amazing film experience.
Lighten the basket, we gotta gain height.
Jules Verne, the man whose great stories inspired such unusual films as Around the World in 80 Days, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Journey to the Center of the Earth, surpasses them all with Mysterious Island. Starring Michael Craig, who triggers the screen's most thrilling escape, Gary Merrill as a war correspondent, Joan Greenwood, shipwrecked on the mysterious island. And in this story of survival, Michael Callan and Beth Rogan.
Come on.
What's it doing?
I don't know.
Sealing us in.
Also starring Herbert Lom as the mysterious Captain Nemo and his fabulous submarine, the Nautilus.
Aren't we able to do anything to save ourselves?
There's nothing that can be done.
Super Dynamation, newest and greatest screen process, astonishes the eye with such scenes as the fight to the death with a prehistoric devilfish, the discovery and destruction of an underwater city, Mysterious Island, photograph on land, under the sea, and in the air. Truly a first in motion pictures.
The original script for Mysterious Island was merely how to survive on a desert island. It was a wonderful Jules Verne story to read, but it was definitely dated. And in order to keep an audience in a theater for an hour and a half, we had to inject certain elements that we felt from the experience in making the seventh voyage were very necessary to Mysterious Island. So I made a series of drawings of visuals that I felt could be included. When we first started considering rewriting the script, we thought we'd inject a prehistoric element. We were going to have the island with many dinosaurs and a prehistoric concept, some of which is still in the picture, only modified. When Cy Enfield came on the picture, we decided that through many conferences that it would be better to bring it up to date and not use the prehistoric concept. So we used the concept of Captain Nemo devising the means of growing wheat 10 feet high and enlarging the crab to account for all these strange creatures on the island. So there's a little mixture of 2 or 3 scripts which ended up in the final picture. The first creature that the men encountered on the island was a giant crab. And to achieve that effect, we bought a crab from Harrod's department store, an edible crab, I believe they call them. And we had it cleaned out and an armature put in its place so that it could be made use of through the stop motion method.
And this bee created a frightening hive in Mysterious Island.
The script that we wrote concerning prehistoric animals was the giant bird that they encountered. Actually, it was a known prehistoric concept, so it made it much easier to design. We felt we could keep it in because it was quite an exciting section to animate, and also that we felt it would give a little humor. The bird and its awkward movements, dear Bernie Herman sensed that comedy effect, and he put a score in it that made it quite unusual and interesting. We had a cephalopod in the picture underwater with a great circular shell, which again was a hangover of a prehistoric nautilus. And one of the problems, of course, was to animate all the tentacles so that they looked like they were underwater, which meant very small movements. Sometimes one would have to move each tentacle about less than a millimeter a frame in order to get that subtle underwater feeling. Of course, later we printed over a series of waves and distortion to give the further effect of the underwater shooting.
.企業を安定に持っていくにはシリーズものの隙間を埋める新しい企画が必要です。
ネズミ一匹を埋めるワンカットを取るのに一日中かかったじゃないか。撮影反対。
After seeing the Alfred Hitchcock movie The Birds, this Japanese group decided to make their own animal attack concept by using rats. Among the horde of giant rats, they decided to also have a big mammoth-size rat which had tusks, and it was called Nezra. Filming began in the fall of 1963. They shot 3,000 feet of film. There was even a 3-foot remote control rat constructed for the film, along with a giant rat suit, Puppets were planning on being used for the earlier stages of the rats' growth, and then they would switch over to real rats. A publicity campaign was used for the film, offering to pay ones to capture rats for the production. However, most of the rats that were brought into the studio were white rats. So they decided to dye these white rats black. However, the rats ended up licking all the dye off their hair. Miniature sets were built of cities for the real rats to run amok on. The main problem, though, with the production was because the rats were nocturnal, they wouldn't move around as the director wanted them to. So electricity wires were ran through the miniature sets in order to agitate the rats to move. Eventually, the set was plagued with fleas, ticks, and lice. On top of that, the rats were eating each other. They were cannibalizing. Finally, the film studio shut the production down, not wanting to waste the miniatures that they built. Like they built miniature jet fighters that was constructed for the movie. They ended up using the miniatures and these fighter jets that they constructed for a movie that came out in 1965 called Gamera.
See the sorcerer of the black arts, the gold helmet faceless vizier, the death fight of the centaur on the griffin, the six-armed goddess of evil. The flying homunculus. The savage siren on a rampage. The duel with the vanishing sorcerer. The one-eyed centaur. The Oracle. pinnacle of all knowledge. The fountain of destiny.
Beyond this door lies a world of wonders. A studio where special effects wizard Ray Harryhausen and producer Charles Schneer make the unreal real in the magic of Dinorama for countless moviegoers. They are discussing Kali, the six-armed goddess who matches swords with the legendary Sinbad in their latest voyage into the unknown.
I have to enter the picture when the shutter is closed and move each arm into a different position. Could you change frame, please? Now you see the figure on the background has changed its position considerably. Now the figure in the foreground has to be animated frame by frame so that at a certain moment when the figure on the background raises his sword, it may take 10 frames, it may take 12 frames, it depends, will make contact with the sword that's in the background. And this process is repeated and repeated and repeated many times until the desired result is obtained.
In their new film, The Golden Voyage of Sinbad, Schneer and Harryhausen move from the drawing board to a sunny beach in Majorca. This beach isn't as lonely as you might think. The film crew and a group of holiday sunbathers are on hand to watch. This is how the landing will look in the finished film against a highly imaginative background of ancient cliff carvings. As you can see, there's a real live Sinbad played by John Philip Law, as well as the lovely Caroline Munro, who shares his adventures. They are entering the fantastic cave in which they are about to do their first scene. No stuntman for this Sinbad. John Philip Law has to climb a 75-foot rope in this daring scene. Meanwhile, back at the beach, Caroline poses for some magazine pinups, technically and figuratively out of costume. But in the dressing room, she's being prepared to meet a horde of mysterious green men from the island of Lemuria. With this result. Half man and half horse. What are the odds when a griffin meets a centaur in mortal combat? Who will triumph in this struggle to the death?
Now, H.G. Wells' masterpiece of science fiction, The Food of the Gods. The terrifying tale of man fighting for his life against an ecology gone berserk. This is the last chance for an unsuspecting world against harmless animals and insects made huge and vicious by the food of the gods. Marjo Gortner. Pamela Franklin, Ralph Meeker, Ida Lupino, H.G. Wells' The Food of the Gods, for a taste of hell.
God love Tom Berman, who made these giant rats, you know? I mean, really, you know, you think of all these things, well, you have to look at them and go, are you serious? This is gonna work? I mean, come on, they were big stuffed rats, you know? Oh, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of magic in movies, but when you see the actual, it's like, you know, when you see the Gremlins, do you know? I mean, if you know, people say to me, was it scary working on Gremlins? And I think, are you kidding? I think of 30 men blowing through straws. I mean, that's the way I think of Gremlins. It's the same with these rats, you know? They're big, puffy fur balls, you know, that somebody made. And, you know, but you do have to act like you're afraid of them. And Bert loved his rats. I mean, Bert really loved his rats, okay? Okay, so these were precious items. And I mean, we all had to take this very, very seriously. The worms, are you kidding? It's that chicken and the rooster, or whatever that thing was that scared the heck out of me. I mean, there were so many giant things in that movie. The bees, the wasps. Are you kidding? I mean, I'm highly allergic to bees. I'm highly allergic to bees and wasps, so those are scarier to me than the rats.
You're a brilliant scientist.
You used an experimental growth hormone on a kid? It started out as an experiment to save mankind.
Amazing. This is the food of the gods.
I'll just settle for an antidote. But it ended up as a nightmare that could destroy the world.
Help! Help!
For those with a taste for terror. Food of the Gods 2. Alligator.
To me, it was scarier than Jaws.
I'm just glad I had him to grab onto. I cannot believe this movie.
It just scared me to death. I thought my heart would stop.
You're just on the edge of your seat.
Really a thrilling experience.
I must have jumped a mile.
It comes up through the sidewalk. I almost died.
Alligator. Rated R.
They were getting rid of a child's pet and creating an unstoppable killer. It crawled from beneath the city, and nothing can stop it. Nothing. Alligator. Rated R.
$1.1 million was spent making this movie Alligator. The idea came from when a 25-foot alligator was shot in Beverly Hills. So ones got together and came up with an idea, let's make a giant alligator movie. So they brought these sculptures together to create a 25-foot model for the movie. And it was constructed according to the measurements and the look of the alligator that was killed. The body and legs were left hollow so actors could get inside the alligator to simulate it walking. By the time the alligator was constructed, it was so detailed and so well built, it weighed a couple hundred pounds, which made it difficult for the actors to move around once they were inside. On top of it, a separate head and tail was also created for specific shots, such as when the alligator was eating people. And when the tail they would have close-ups of the alligator's tail moving and swatting people and hitting things. Then a 1/3 scale miniature set was also constructed. Scenes of the alligator coming up through the street was done with sheets of styrofoam for this breakaway sidewalk. The robotic alligator's head would burst through for the effect. And underneath the sidewalk they had Fuller's earth, which is like, you know, an artificial dirt that's used in miniatures.
That's the one on the TV!
And then they switch over for a long shot of a real alligator walking away.
What is the terrifying mutant that strikes from behind the shroud of night? That night of the Lepus. A night of total terror. Night of the Lepus. Kill one, and thousands take their place. What devil creatures growing weight and size every day are hidden behind the eyes of horror? Night of the Lepus.
Somewhere in the Australian outback, he's waiting.
Something big scared him away.
Like what?
I don't know. But it was huge. It was as big as a rhino.
Jake Cullen, the obsessed hunter, determined to stop it.
To come to the waterhole to drink.
Jack, get some help. Andy.
No, he's mine. You're a Pathfinders.
Animal campaigner?
And dumped at the Pet Pack Cannery 8 miles west of here.
The American animal campaigner who got more than the story she bargained for.
Don't rub her up! She wasn't very popular around here.
What'd you do to my wife, Benny?
And the crazed brothers who protected their own secrets at all costs.
You ask too many bloody questions.
Razorback.